Hi, welcome to High Output, the podcast exploring how today's engineering leaders are building tomorrow's high-performing teams. I'm your host, William Chang, and each episode, we sit down with visionary engineering leaders who are forging new paths in our rapidly evolving field. Join us as we gain a window into tomorrow's software organizations and discover what's next for our profession and the entire software industry. This episode is brought to you by Maestro AI. Engineering leaders, let's be real. Building high-performing software teams has never been more challenging. You're juggling delivery timelines, team health, and the constant pressure to communicate value upward. That's where Maestro comes in. Maestro enables you to improve velocity, spot blockers, and make better decisions faster by seamlessly integrating with your existing tools like Jira, GitHub, and Slack. Maestro cuts through the noise, revealing exactly where your team is spending time and energy. Visit getmaestro.ai for more info, because you don't know everything, but Maestro does. Our guest today is Troy Astorino. Troy is co-founder and CTO of PicnicHealth, a company that builds AI to get better treatment to patients faster. They do this through two main products. One, an AI medical assistant that manages medical records and coordinates care for patients. And two, an integrated clinical research platform that runs end-to-end studies for biotech and pharma. Picnic has built the world's best LLM for structuring and interpreting medical records and works with 7 out of the 10 largest pharma companies. Welcome to the show, Troy.
Thanks for having me, William.
Tell us about yourself. How did you get into engineering?
Growing up, I had always wanted to be an inventor. And I think as I got older, realized that the best way to be an inventor was to study engineering. In school, I studied physics and aerospace engineering, but always loved programming and taking like a programming side to that and like robotics and things like that. And while I was in school, I just saw the incredible power and leverage of building systems on the internet, and knew that was seemed like the best way to be able to have large scale impact and positive impact on the world.
And has that been a main goal for you? Making a large impact, like picking whatever is, whatever is the biggest, some people chase that. Some people are like, I have this thing I must do, right? Where are you in that camp?
I think impact has always been a pretty strong motivator of wanting to do things that are like helpful, meaningful. Been working in healthcare for many years. I think one of the things that is like motivating and encouraging and like a lot of fun is knowing that like the things that we build can have like very direct impact on like patients' lives, on people's lives. But I also, think there's lots of ways to have impact and build tools that empower companies and empower other people to, create things, be more efficient with their businesses. So to me, at least, I think impact is a strong motivator.
Yeah. I mean, how did you make that transition to healthcare? Because you mentioned you're doing aerospace, you were doing, physics. It's completely different. That I saw that you were working at like Lockheed or some of these places before. What made health? Like there are a lot of places you could have big impact, right? Like, why health?
Yeah, and Lockheed and SpaceX were like places that I was before, and I started thinking that I would stay in aerospace. But medicine's somewhat of a family business. My parents are both doctors. So growing up, I think had some level of osmotic knowledge gain from just being around healthcare. I had a lot of like, aunts, uncles, like cousins, lots of people in healthcare in different ways. And when I was, before starting Picnic, had seen that before I started Picnic, it was around the time of the transition to electronic medical record systems. the in 2010 was the High Tech Act, which was the like a big $40 billion subsidy program designed to get um, doctors and health systems using electronic medical record systems in the United States. Me having like a programming like software engineering
Mm-hmm.
like background, thought like, oh, this is great, this is awesome. It's like there's going to be lots of problems that are solved here. I worked in my parents' offices and been horrified by walls of filing cabinets.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then I think was a little disappointed to see that the way that most EMR systems were implemented actually made things less efficient
Mm-hmm.
for doctors and like worse for patient care, arguably worse for patient care. It's obviously it's changed over time, but I think thought there was a big opportunity to build on top of like all of the work that has had and like capital that had gone into like transitioning medical records to digital information. Um, but to take that and translate it into more direct patient impact and more like real world impact by like making it work better. So that was really the main impetus and motivator that pushed me into the space.
Interesting. Well, you know, you you started the company, you co-founded the company, right? Um, how was that journey from early days? I mean, it's not easy, right? We both know that, but tell me a bit about that journey. Like what were some of the twists and turns to get you to the current day?
I mean, as you know, I think the job changes a lot. We first started the company at this point in 2014, so it's been both had different versions of the product, um, but certainly my job has changed. For the first many years, was just like I was writing code
Mm-hmm.
all day, and just like shipping product, and that was a lot of fun. I think that's like sometimes it feels like the most fun. Um, but as the business grew, as the team grew, the best, the highest leverage way for me to like work and to like have impact is less, you know, building everything directly and more like building out the team, managing like hiring and managing engineers, hiring and managing PMs, figuring out how engineering should work with like product and design and um, then aligning like both the kind of like mechanics of like how engineering is working with the direction that we know want the business to go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think things have changed quite a bit over time. Um, One of the things that has been really exciting, I think, now is in the past few years with AI really like very much changing the both like the opportunity space in terms of products and the ways that teams work and can work. It's been a good reason to get closer again to uh, technical specifics because I think the ability to understand like where opportunity is and like where the business can go requires more like direct hands-on experience. I mean, it always does to some degree, but I think it's like an increased level
Mm-hmm.
right now when we have a big technological shift.
Got it. Yeah. Well, what do you like do you like the people part of it more, the technical part of it more? I mean, it sounds like it's obviously like you said, the jobs changed and everything, and now we're even changing more with AI, right? But what do you like? Let's say dream job, infinite money. What would you do?
Yeah, really throwing off the constraints. I mean,
I don't know about infinite
I
money.
think
That might not work, but
yeah, that all sorts of societal questions of what will happen
yeah.
there. Um, I think for me, I'm heavily motivated by what we can build, by the like product system like change we can put out in the world, and
Hmm.
um, at a certain point, it just you can't do that by yourself, right? You like need to
Hmm.
build a team. You need to have like a team that like works together well, to be able to do that. But then it also can be like it's more fun to work with a team, and like when you have like lots of people that are um, working together, coming up with stuff that you wouldn't have thought of or imagined. You just like see things improve, and like you didn't do anything. There's like something that's also like fun and magical about that. Um, so I don't know. I think like finding the right balance there is something that I struggle with. That I think like engineering leaders, some engineering leaders struggle with, like in like what they prefer, or where they spend their time, and trying to find the right balance of like the most important thing work for me to do is to have make sure the teams are like working well together and able to be their best, and that's like the highest way for me to like deliver impact and like have that product be created. But then also not like getting so far away that I'm like the Dilbert pointy haired boss that doesn't know how stuff works or how what anything does.
Yeah, you don't want to be just the paper pusher guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Nice. Nice. Well, um, you mentioned AI a little bit, right? And having to get your hands a little dirtier now. I mean, before, certainly before like 2020 or something, like AI was very different than ChatGPT, OpenAI and everything. That was a different world. How how did you decide to change the company did you see this happening and be like, hey, we need to do something? Or was it more natural? Like, oh man, if we don't do something, we're gonna be dead as a company, How did you think about that? Because LLMs weren't even, they weren't around by the time that you when you started out.
Yeah. Um, Great question. I think explaining a little bit about how the underlying like systems of how like Picnic Health works will help answer that. So the biggest technical challenge that we've spent a lot of the company's lifetime solving or focusing on is for any individual patient, how can you get all of their medical records, um, wherever they are in the US into one place, and then structure and normalize them to get to a like unified representation that is valuable in patient treatment and like understanding progression and like treatment and response and safety,
Hmm.
all these different things. And I think traditional like historical approaches to that have been kind of try to treat it as like a massive kind of like ETL problem where you have like data in a bunch of places and you need to load it up and transform it and combine it.
Hmm.
Um, but that approach has like never worked well.
Hmm.
Like even interoperability was like a core goal of that like huge US stimulus um, program, and it's still not there today. I think the NHS very famous. There's a list on Wikipedia of like the biggest software failures in history. One of them is like the NHS's attempt to integrate all of their health systems to be able to have like one. And anyway, the core to our hypothesis from the beginning was that you couldn't do this in a purely deterministic way, that you needed to be able to leverage um, most of the company's lifetime. We talked about it as machine learning,
Hmm. Hmm.
for being able to do this. And so from the beginning, we were ingesting records, some data we can get electronically, but a lot, particularly in the beginning, still today, is like faxed in. And so we're getting PDFs that are mailed, emailed, faxed, etc. Um, and then annotating, like labeling that data, both to be able to get it into a form that's actually like usable by patients, now by researchers, but then also to provide training data so that we can train models, to do that. And so for most of the company's history, we were um, you know, training models for different tasks in that data structuring pipeline, and like choosing an architecture that was most appropriate to that problem and or that particular task. Um, and we get over time built like lot of a lot of automation, like had like pretty
Hmm.
strongly performing models and move to a world where like annotation was, more checking model output
Hmm.
than just producing labels. Um, but at the end of 2022, we saw after GPT, and I think it was December, it was like late 2022 when it was like 3.5 GPT 3.5
Hmm.
with ChatGPT.
Hmm.
Anyway, around that time, I had seen some research around papers out of Google around instruction fine tuning. So being able to fine tune large language models for a specific like range of task types. Um, and we saw that that could be um, a really effective approach for us to take both. And sorry, that when you do that instruction fine tuning, not only does it drive improvements across some of the tasks that it's trained on, but it also drives better like out of training set task learning.
Hmm.
So we started experimenting and shifting over to, instead of training 20 or so different models for different
Hmm.
portions of the pipeline, to one, um, fine tuning open weight LLMs for the different tasks we have in our pipeline. And so today, our kind of core LLM for data, medical record structuring and interpretation is fine tuned on top of Llama 3. We have 350 million clinician annotations that we've collected over the company's history
Wow.
that span over like, yeah, it's like there's a lot of data because we've had a lot of years where we were, there's over 100,000 patients that like we've worked with and built like longitudinal records that, span records from over 1 million doctors. Um, so it's like a very big corpus of data that we could fine tune an open weight model on. Um, and I think that, still today it outperforms frontier, like much larger frontier, powerful models
Hmm.
in medical record understanding and interpretation. Because I don't think that like that kind of medical record data is in the is in like the training corpuses that are available to these like frontier models. So that side of AI has been in the company's history, and I think shifted to LLMs, but have been like kind of like a through line to how we've approached. The thing that's really different now that wasn't possible before is um, a lot of the work that a lot of our focus is in having a platform, a system for running end-to-end clinical trials for pharma. And that's something that historically is a very services heavy business, where there are these consulting companies called contract research organizations that throw bodies of people and accumulate many, many, many hours of work and like cost plus contracts to help run trials. But there's huge opportunity to leverage AI and LLMs to like do a lot of that used to be services work in a technology based way. And so that's where a lot of our focus is now.
Interesting. That's really interesting. I mean, do you think, back to the LLM front, do you think that that advantage that you guys have in data, like, will that persist as time goes on? Everybody's like, and people have very different takes on it, right? There's some people who are like, hey, look, these models are going to do everything, like AGI is right around the corner, right? And there are also people saying, like, like you were saying earlier, like, but domain specific knowledge is still locked away. Like, it's not that easy to pull that in. Um, do you think long term you guys are going to have to make another shift there in the future? Or are you pretty confident, like, hey, look, this is data. It's taken this many years and this data is still there, it's still locked up.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. And I'm not certain, like, if you project out 5 years, I'm not sure what the answer is. Um, I know that a lot of say like the model that like we fine tune is like an 8 billion parameter model.
Hmm.
Obviously much, much, much smaller and like less powerful, cheaper, but like less generally powerful than the like largest models that you see. I think there's kind of two ways from a like business strategy perspective. I think that the our ability to do this on EMR data is unique today. It does provide us with an advantage today,
Hmm.
but we can't like expect that that's going to stay in place forever.
Hmm.
And so, it's where in part we're like very focused on building this like these end-to-end workflows and systems around, more of like a vertical application than like a horizontal application. Um, in practice, there's like two parts that go into like the data that we have. One is, training on anonymized record sets. The way that we actually train the model is that we have like a continued pre-training where we're like doing the same kind of like next token prediction
Hmm.
to like continue pre-training the model. And then the post-training phase is actually going from underlying records to like structured data in this kind of like um, input output like aligned to like type of like structuring and abstraction tasks that are valuable for aggregating medical information. Um, I think at some point all the labs are like interested in healthcare,
Hmm.
and they're probably going to get at some point access to anonymized data sets to include in like their pre-training. Um, I don't know if that's, Google tried to a few years ago. There was like a big people get upset. And it's like they kind of moved back from that. Um, in our data, that like the continued pre-training has a much smaller effect than the post-training.
Hmm.
And so there's one, like get access to the data, and there's two, invest a lot in labeling. That is a capital investment. People are investing a ton of capital in getting better at certain tasks. In theory, they could. I don't see that being a core focus. But like I said, in 5 years, it's hard to predict.
Right.
The other thing that I think is interesting right now is that, with reasoning models where like reinforcement learning is like working quite well in domains where you have like verifiable answers, it makes people think like, oh, proprietary data matters more again than they would have said like two years ago
Hmm.
or maybe a year ago. Um, I think that the jury's out there. Are we going to have like stuff where there's you know you have domain specific RL that's training the reasoners like in the domains that they're operating, training agents in the domains that they're operating in? We'll probably have a better answer on that in about 6 months.
Okay. Okay. No, that's good to know. That's good to know. I mean, do you think, obviously there's a lot of progress in AI, right? Um, do you see, um, do you see health changing that quickly? Right? There's the thing that's like, oh man, it's taken how many years even to adopt, like actually adopt medical records and have people like a patient see their own medical records. Even that's like not even done in some places. Like how on the one hand you had AI, which feels like a juggernaut, right? On the other hand, you have this like stone. Um, what yeah, tell us more about that. Do you think that is, you know, where do you think that's going?
Yeah, there's I think like a big difference between the capabilities of AI and then like what's the impact in the real world and practice.
Mm-hmm.
I think like of economists like Tyler Cowen is like a big um very very bullish on like AI capabilities. But in terms of impact, he like translates that as like, oh, maybe it'll increase GDP by like a point like a year. And that's like a huge impact, right?
Right,
Like
right.
like historically. But very very far from the like singularity is nigh um type views. I tend to think that it's probably closer to, it like takes a long time to actually get systems in place having like a large scale impact on like productivity and how things work. And so I think the technical capabilities are advancing at like an amazing pace. But distribution of that technology into like real industries and real workflows like takes a lot longer and requires people to like change behavior. I'm extremely bullish on AI and see it potentially having um, huge transformative impact and like hope that we can have a lot of the like life changing like longevity, like curing like many more diseases that I think people hope. And, I think we're doing what we can to help make that happen. Um, but I think things will probably take longer than the most excitable enthusiasts might see.
Yeah, the newscasters or the the people who are really really fanboys or something.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm like a pretty big. I consider myself a pretty big fanboy, but still think that like for the impact to show up in economic numbers, like to say like getting to like a 20% like GDP growth like year on year, like that'd be wild. And that is like,
Yeah, that'll take a while. Okay.
gonna be more difficult.
Yeah. I mean, it comes back to what you were saying earlier, which is your comment actually about teams, right? Like you can't do something alone, you need a team. And that also comes back here, which is, well, you can't like just have AI and be like, here's AI, you need to work as the team, as the country, as the industry to really have people enact change. It's not just like you have the magic tech and now magically the thing is solved. It's that you still need to change people's behavior. You need to get your team on board, basically.
Yeah. One space that like is near to us that I think is a great example of this kind of phenomenon of like there being like things that you need to get on board is there's a lot of really exciting like AI drug discovery type work. We're finding like new potential like assets and or being able to like better design molecules or like different therapies. But you still have this huge bottleneck. Like even if there's like way more like potential assets of like how do you actually run trials with them?
Mm.
How do you make those trials go faster? Like typically going from like phase 1 to phase 3 is like 7 years. It's like, okay, you can have like a great drug candidate, like a great target, but then you're still like 10 years away
Hmm.
almost from like people actually being able to use that. Um, and it's a hard problem to shorten that where I mean, there are like technology solutions you can apply, but there's a lot of like people and like regulatory and like, how do we um, make this move faster? And that's the part of like the bottleneck that like we PicnicHealth are focused on, but it's not something that can like change overnight. If you got to like, you know, uh, ASI, like official super intelligence, that's not going to change
Right.
the bottleneck of regulatory approvals for like new therapies. So
Right.
there's just like a ton of those places, and like AI will change what bottlenecks are the most important, but the bottlenecks will still be there that we have to get past.
Yeah. Interesting. And building on that, you're still going to have to pipette a bazillion, a bazillion things to even test the thing in the first place, right? You
Yeah,
you can't just
yeah,
theory
yeah,
craft everything and call it a day.
yeah.
Interesting. How did you guys come up with the name Picnic Health?
Um, the we wanted something that was there's like three origin stories, and I'm like really not sure which one is like 100% true at this point. Um, we wanted something that was consumery and trustworthy, and there's like a small set of names that we looked at, and it was available. We did a Google consumer survey on its various attributes, and it did best. I've looked back at that and looked at the other names, like, oh, we could have known this without having to run the survey. It seems pretty obvious. Then I think we also, when talking to someone about what we were trying to do in terms of being able to pull all the patients, like someone's records together, they're like, it's no picnic getting your medical records, and It's a great name.
There you go. You're going to make it a picnic. That's cool. Man. All right. Well, then what is next for you guys? I mean, there's a lot of things you could do. Uh, um, or just what's next in general.
For us, our focus right now is, we have this kind of unique model for being able to do certain types of research where we can engage directly with the patient and in a way that's like pretty passive for the patient, aggregate and structure their medical records, which, for a lot of kinds of research are where like a lot of the important like endpoints are. So we've been, developing that system that is like more integrated and streamlined than like a traditional model for conducting clinical research. And one of the exciting things I think we're focused on right now is building agents that can operate on top of that platform to really aggressively like cut out some of the routine, like kind of low leverage human like labor that goes into doing clinical research. And we have this kind of unique ability to do that because the way that we run trials, everything runs in like one integrated system. So you have we have an easier opportunity, a more narrow domain for agents to be operating in, which I think is pretty important for having higher reliability agents and systems. And we still have like humans that are like reviewing things. But it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of opportunity. Things are moving really fast. So it's a cool space to be building in.
Yeah. And do you think the advances in LLMs and AI, is that going to be good for you guys overall? It sounds like, maybe it'll help you guys out, and you have the data, you have the you have the other things that are maybe like make that field a little less attractive or less fast moving, and so you guys actually have a chance. It sounds like it's a good thing, but let me know what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very good thing for us. Yeah, it's very exciting. I'm very glad that we live in a world where a few years ago it was very possible that we've ended up in a world where all value accrued to the kind of like model trainers and model creators, and like when we do have like a specific domain model that is helpful, but there's lots of places specifically in the agentic stuff where we're building on top of foundation models, and I think we ended up in a world where a lot of value is like delivered and captured by kind of the application layer that's using LLMs as like foundational technology that enables a bunch of different use cases and capabilities that weren't possible before. But that the value is still in how those are tuned for particular applications and use cases. So we have a specific one that we're focused in terms of improving research that we think is really impactful, and having these systems that enable us to be faster, cheaper, and more reliable is a huge win.
Fantastic. Glad to hear it. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Troy. We really appreciated hearing everything you had to say from both, how you got started and how you switched to health, to how now you guys are pushing the field forward. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, William. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of High Output. If today's conversation was useful, please take a moment to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Engineering leadership is evolving rapidly, and we're committed to bringing you insights from the front lines every week. Visit getmaestro.ai/high-output for show notes, transcripts, and past episodes. Until next time, I'm William Chang, and this has been High Output, where we explore how today's engineering leaders are building tomorrow's high-performing teams.